Gingerbread Man Down, Clean Up on Aisle podcast.
Well, Ann, thank you so much for joining us on Clean Up on Aisle podcast, the dirty truth about grocery stores. I'm Jef Harmatz, joined as always by Adam Fligsten.
Hello, Jef. How you doing?
I'm doing good, aside from, the heat. I'm wearing slides out of the house for I don't do this very often, my Puma sandals, and I was at a liquor store on the way in, and I'm not used to wearing them, and the sandal just flew off of my foot. Oh. And then the clerk remarked and said, "Oh, you're not supposed to go there."
I do the socks and sandals, not infrequently. It's not the most attractive look, but it's easy.
We all do it now from time.
Exactly.
I'm trying to figure out how to dress for success this summer. I mean, we're all desert people, I suppose, and I'm talking about maybe getting into some linen pants. I've been a dirty desert denim guy for a long time, and it's maybe a little too hot for that sort of thing.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Well, welcome to our show, Ann Larson.
Thanks.
How you are the author of the brand new book, Clean Up on Aisle 5. Is that right?
I am, and so your podcast is called Clean Up on Aisle 5?
Clean Up on Aisle podcast.
Podcast. Okay. So yeah.
Yes.
This is perfect. This is a match made in heaven.
And we talk a lot about grocery stores. I mean, when it came time to naming our show, this seemed like a pretty good name. We had some other ideas that were maybe taken.
But also too clever, so clever that you wouldn't get them right away.
Yes.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
A walk down the aisle was proposed to us, which we liked.
Or walk on Aisle 5? I don't know.
Yeah. Shelf Life was proposed, and that was taken by a podcast by some librarians, I believe. And
oh, yeah.
out of respect for the library, we chose not to double dip on that
Smart.
name. And there's also another podcast about
Trump.
Donald Trump, the American president, called Clean Up on Aisle 46?
45.
45.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which-
That's all too easy.
Yeah, I think that's a really popular podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's people. I mean, legitimately like shitting on Trump. So that goes places.
Yeah.
But Ann, so obviously it's a famous thing that is shouted out at grocery stores and said through the microphone a lot, but how did you land on Clean Up on Aisle 5 as the name of your book?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I love talking to you guys. We went back and forth about titles, but the book opens with a scene of a man coming into the supermarket where I worked and taking a shit on the floor. We can swear on this show, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I was taking a shit on, and other. I've had to use other words because I couldn't say shit. So, a man came in and shit on the floor in the store where I was working, and that scene sort of opens the book. I got to work and I was about to punch in, and the incident had happened before I got there. But one of my colleagues said, "Hey, did you hear what happened? Guy shit on the floor right there." And we kind of both knew what had happened. Our store had a public bathroom, but you had to pay. You had to buy something to use it. So when you bought something, you get a code on the bottom of your receipt that opened the door.
Oh,
but
wow.
Homeless people would come in all the time and use the bathroom, and they would just wait outside the door. Or homeless people or anybody who didn't have money or didn't want to buy anything, they'd wait outside the door, and then when somebody came out of the door, they would go in. And so we kind of both knew that this is what had happened. So it seemed like it wasn't an aisle in my, but it seemed like the book begins with a cleanup incident, so it naturally led us to Clean Up on Aisle 5. Yeah.
We've done an episode on bathrooms in grocery stores in the past, and
oh my gosh, I got to listen to that one. There's so many stories. Yeah.
It's not to get so serious right away, but it's a super political thing. It's a very societal thing, who gets to use the bathroom where and when.
Exactly.
And it's not if a unhoused person is like waiting to use the bathroom and can't, and I've got to sneak in there, stuff's gonna happen like that. People have to use the bathroom at places.
Yeah. And I used to be a janitor at Barnes and Noble in Brooklyn, New York. So I had to clean up a lot of stuff that was on
The one in Court Street.
Yes, that's the one.
I know that one.
Have you used that bathroom?
I have not used the bathroom. I've been in that Barnes and Noble, but yeah. I can imagine what went on in there.
I mean, I again getting into I don't know, public spaces, and you talk about this in your book where grocery stores kind of become a community space in a certain way. I mean, it's there to be a commercial entity, a commercial business, but it's also a place where people can exist in air conditioning. If you're in the desert and it's 105 degrees and your power's out, I mean, you could go hang out at the grocery store or the bookstore. We don't have any bookstores where we are.
Walmart.
Walmart.
Yeah.
Look, those Walmart's filling in where there should be a public place where people can go. Yeah.
A recent guest on our show actually wrote a book called Overdue about the library system. And a lot of the stuff that you talk about in your book as far as being a community open space is...
But sort of being forced into that position.
Yes.
Due to the lack of social service, proper social services.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
We're really digging right into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, that struck me about the store when I started working there is I call it in the book a split screen. On the one hand, there's this one side where it's we're a community space and people come in and your cashier's name. And they're like, hey, how you doing? And they know all the kids' names. And, people come in, like I said, for air conditioning. It feels like a community space. They come in to get quarters for the laundry machine, all that kind of stuff. And that's wonderful. We had it was the pandemic when I was working in the supermarket. So we had elderly people would come in the morning and walk the aisles for exercise. It was the only place open, right? So there was all sorts of ways that the store served this community function. But then there's also the other side of the split screen where it's anybody can come in and do anything anytime. And that can go bad in a lot of different ways, as I'm sure you know.
Yes. Well,
so there's just both the supermarket contains multitudes. What can I say?
That's part of the fun of doing this show that we've been doing, and I assume the fun that you had about writing about a grocery store. And again, it's a pretty serious book, but you can it's a microcosm for everything that's happening in society at the moment. Everything that's going on in the country, in the world, is reflected on the shelves in the grocery store, with the people who are there, a memorable part of the book you mentioned talking about the Super Bowl shopping, and then you kind of follow the shrimp cocktail that got spilled on the cash register back to, enslaved fishermen in Thailand. So yeah, if you just kind of scratch at any of these surfaces, if you clean them up or whatever, get the shit off of them, you can look deeply into America.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that. It's really a microcosm of our society at the moment.
Right.
You can really see it. It's all there. It's all there if you look close enough.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was really struck with in your book, and we'll talk a lot more about your book because we both read it. Is just how the grocery store is so obviously pretty much the direct interface between a regular working person and global capitalism, basically, and all of the forces that come along. Even right now, all the politicians, they talk about oil, which is tangentially related, but then they talk about eggs. And those are the two talking points that people talk about when they talk about affordability. So it's the most baseline thing that everybody is engaging in. Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And, you can get chickens and do chickens and get eggs in the yard, but you can't do oil in the yard. Oh, I guess if you have a shovel or a drill, maybe you could get oil from
the right property. Yeah.
And did you spend time in New York City, or were you ever?
Yes, I lived in New York for a lot of years. Was involved in lots of organizing, Occupy Wall Street era. And I co-founded an organization called the Debt Collective a few years later, which was still around. Still work with them from time to time. And this was an organization that worked on winning student debt relief from the federal government for former students of these scam for-profit colleges.
When you say scam for-profit colleges, can you kind of tell me what that is, just real quick?
Yeah. We have they're all scams. We have these for-profit colleges in the country. So we have the system that we have for higher ed, right? So we have the public system, which everybody knows, your U of C's, whatever, and then you have the private schools, which are often prestigious, but not always. The Harvards, the UPenns or whatever. And then there are also these, and those are nonprofit entities. And then we have these for-profit schools, which are like the University of Phoenix is one of the larger ones. When we were fighting this battle, the largest for-profit college in the country, or one of them was this called Corinthian, and it had 100 or so campuses across the country under different names. There were campuses called Everest and Heald and Wyotech, people may have heard of, but they were all part of this umbrella, this Corinthian umbrella. And what Corinthian did was it lured students in with the promise of better life. Right? We all know what the promises are. You're going to go to college and you're going to get a degree, and all of a sudden you're going to have all these skills, and employers are going to want you, and your wages are going to go up. And it's no problem. These loans you're taking out, you're going to be able to pay off those debts, no worries. And they really played on people's desire to live a better life, to take care of their family. But it was all a scam. They took student loan money from the federal government. The students that would come and enroll, right, would apply for student loans, federal student loans, and that money would go to the schools. And since it's a for-profit school, right, they shoveled that money to investors, executives, and the schools didn't really provide any a real education. It was really shoddy, and the classes were not taught by legitimate teachers. Students came out with all kinds of complaints. They knew they were being screwed, but by the time you figure it out, you're $40,000, $50,000 in. So the Debt Collective lobbied for many years. We collaborated with those students that had attended Corinthian and lobbied for debt relief and won it. Eventually, it took a lot of years, but yeah. So that's kind of what I was doing before the supermarket. But a nonprofit organization like that is always very precarious. You never know whether funders are going to keep funding you. You never know whether the big philanthropies in New York City are going to get bored and move on to the next thing. And so it was never, I did earn a salary for a while at that job, but it wasn't really stable, and eventually found myself unemployed, and pandemic hit, needed a job, and guess what? Supermarkets were hiring. So that's where I ended up.
So when are you from Utah originally, or?
Yep.
Okay. The Salt Lake.
Home.
Okay. We kind of wanted to dig in a little bit about your history with grocery stores. What are Utah grocery stores like compared to other grocery stores?
I mean, in terms of working there or shopping?
When you were young and going to a grocery store, like, what do you remember? I assume that we're in this kind of place, where a lot of the bigger chain grocery stores are kind of the same, whether you're in Utah or in California or in New York. But is there anything like distinct about Utah specific grocery stores? I assume they don't sell booze. Am I on the mark with that?
Well, you can get beer.
Okay.
Beer, but no booze, no wine. Mm-hmm. You can get like the White Claw or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up in Southern California, and moving to New York from Southern California, like, you get booze anywhere in Southern California. You can go to the Vons or the supermarket and, get whatever nasty hooch you're into, get nice champagne. And when I moved to New York after college, I kind of had a bit of a culture shock that other states aren't as loose with the booze, I would say.
No, and the beer here, there's limits on the beer alcohol quantity. So that's pretty, the beers are not, you have to drink more of them. There's a lot out there, and you have to get everybody's ID, so nobody's going to sell you any alcohol, even a beer at the supermarket without ID, even if you're like 90 years old. Never. It's very, very strict in terms of who can have it.
I'm a man in my 40s, and I've been asked for my ID recently. I've kind of got silly ass hair, so.
You think that makes you look?
I think if
17?
I was bald and in a suit, people wouldn't be asking for my ID so much. But I've been getting ID'd a little bit more, and it's very nice and very kind of the people to ask me about that stuff.
Oh, me? Yeah.
But like when you were young and like your first grocery store experiences, like did you go a lot? Like did you go with your parents?
Yeah, in fact, let me clarify something. I actually grew up in southern Idaho, over the border in a small town, and then we moved to Utah. So I worked in an Albertsons in high school. I was a bagger.
Okay.
Yeah. So I definitely had a little bit of experience just as an adolescent, working in the supermarket. And I think that's a little bit, the community aspect existed then too. My friends and I would hang out at Smith's. Like, that was a place to go. You could see your friends. They were all there buying chips and whatever. And my best friend's mom was a cashier at Smith's. So we'd go through and say hi to her mom. And yeah, the supermarket, and this is one of the things I think I didn't really realize until I worked in the grocery store as an adult is what they're like, pillars of the community, right? Mm-hmm. Center of some people, I would see customers who come in 4 or 5 times a week, to my store. And I remember going into our Smiths in my small town all the time. So it was, it's really, I definitely went there more than the library or any place like that.
I've been thinking about this a lot. We're in a very small town here as well. And I was thinking, like, who's like kind of the known people in the community? It is the people that work in the restaurants. It is the people who work at grocery stores.
Yeah.
Right.
Anytime I see like a checker, like out of the environment of the grocery store, I'm like, oh, I know them.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
We still talk about meeting those guys from the one grocery store, right?
Yeah, we were at a local watering hole late one night, and we ended up at a table with some guys from the local Stater Brothers in 29 Palms, and they were so jazzed up to tell us about the renovations that were happening at the grocery store, and we were just like, we were buzzing from just chatting. We didn't even shop at that store, and we were just like, that's pretty cool to get the sneak preview of what the sushi counter is going to look like at the 29 Palm Stater Brothers.
So but why are you guys why is your podcast about grocery stores? Like, what do you find so fascinating about them?
Well, I go every single day. I love to cook. Yeah, I cook. I'm obsessed with. I find them really interesting and sometimes strange. I have to confess I've never worked in a grocery store myself, but I spend a lot of time there. I spend a lot of time thinking about them. I do a lot of comics, like nonfiction comics, and a lot of them have been about grocery stores. And I'll tell you, I use the idea of the prepackaged salad that you get at the grocery store as kind of my little window into grocery stores and produce and farming and packaging, and like that was like a bit of a mind expanding moment for me to take like one thing that I'm buying a lot of at the grocery store and just really dig into it and kind of see everything, the part being, part of the whole essentially.
Interesting. Okay.
So I didn't used to live here. We're about 2.5 hours from LA, and I was living in LA, and I would come out to visit Jef, and pretty much like 50% of our conversations were about grocery stores. So at some point I was like, I guess we just need to do a podcast. So that's why we did it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Wow. Okay.
It's the place. It's aside from being a part of the whole, being the microcosm, it's also a common denominator. Like, maybe not so much these days with Instacart, and I know you talked about that a lot in your book as well, and that's very much I don't know if it's very much a pandemic thing, but it definitely blew up in the pandemic. but I think most people go to grocery stores and have opinions about grocery stores. And you can't say that about a lot in the 21st century. Like that shared experience that connects everybody.
Yeah. It's really one of the only places where you can cross paths with different people from different backgrounds anymore. Because we don't have public spaces. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I'm always curious, and this is something that really blew me away. And anytime we have a guest on our podcast who went from one place to New York, how did you find New York's grocery stores?
I mean, it really depends, right? Like you could go to Whole Foods on Union Square, and it's like, huge and crowded, and like, I mean, you'd line up for half an hour to go through the check stand. Or you're like in my little neighborhood in Brooklyn where you've got Key Food on the corner.
What neighborhood was it?
Well, I was in Clinton Hill for a while, and I was in Bay Ridge for a while. I was around. And then that's where you kind of know the cashier, and you say hey, and it's not as crowded. And they don't have the fancy products, that they have at Whole Foods, but you get your basics.
Living, and as you talk about in your book, you talk about big chain corporate grocery stores kind of pushing out smaller grocery stores. And when I was reading that, I was thinking to myself, I miss, I never really lived in the era of smaller grocery stores, but these small, Key Foods or C-towns in Brooklyn, in like Bushwick and Greenpoint and stuff, which are significantly smaller than like a Whole Foods or a Vons, Albertsons, Kroger kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, it would be nice to just have a nice little mom and pop shop where I could go to the grocery store and, see the clerk that I know. But coming from Southern California, where we have the massive superstores, and then go into those like smaller Brooklyn stores, I was like, I can't find anything. Like, they don't have any of the stuff that I want. I got to go to like 6 stores. I was a bit of a brat about it when I first moved to New York, I'd say.
Well, I remember it was a really big deal when they opened that Trader Joe's, also down on Court Street. I don't know if you were there then. That was super exciting. And there were lines around the block. Everyone was like, oh my God. Then that you have to line up to get to check out there too. And there's just, it's mad. It's maddening. Yeah, a lot of people.
So you made the decision not to name the grocery store you worked. Was that a legal thing?
Yeah, the lawyers at the publisher were like, "Don't do it."
I got it. Yeah.
That's a very fun thing when when you start working on projects that are bigger. Like this is like a book published by a pretty major publisher. The lawyers do get involved and they do advise you against doing certain things.
They read it and they tell you what not to do.
I do a morning show here in Joshua Tree, and I think that I probably should have been advised by a lawyer to not say some things that I've perhaps said on the radio. Not anything bad or nasty, but just naming and shaming, particular people who have wronged me.
Yes. You should be careful.
So I guess part of getting back to this, what your book is essentially about. You left New York, or you came home from New York. Was it during the pandemic?
The pandemic, right at the beginning, yeah.
Okay. So, Adam and I were roommates in Bushwick for 1 year and broke up as roommates, but remained friends. And some of this, like the terrible, horrible holes in the wall that I lived in Brooklyn, like if I had been living in Brooklyn in 2020 when the pandemic hit, I don't know if I could have stayed where I was. Like, it was in really close quarters. I had no outdoor space at my old apartment in Greenpoint. Like,
also the sirens in New York were maddening.
Really?
Our previous guest Amanda has talked about the trauma of that.
Yeah,
of just all night long. It's like we all knew that it was bad, and we all thought that the world might be ending, but I didn't have sirens literally at 4 a.m. Like that. So yeah.
And we had both moved out of New York. We were in, you were in LA still, and I was in Joshua Tree, and like a big cheap house in the middle of the desert, and like everybody, we were out there pre-pandemic, but everybody thought we were brain geniuses for moving, my partner and I. But I think back about like what I would have done if I was still in like my terrible apartment in Williamsburg in 2020, and like with my bad roommates, and it stunk, and my only outdoor space was like where the garbage cans lived. Like, did you leave New York like after the pandemic started, or?
No, I think I got to Utah because I had kind of, I was out of work. So I got there a little bit before things kicked off in terms of the pandemic. So I missed that. I missed the sirens and all that. I mean, I certainly knew people who told me about it. Yeah, no, that was a scary time. I think, everybody wanted to move on from it once it was over, but, and I totally get that. But one of the reasons I wanted to write the book was I was like, we shouldn't forget this essential worker term, right, that we started using. We kind of had a glimpse of like who really mattered in terms of who was doing important labor and who could just go home and forget about it and it didn't matter. And I don't want us to forget that as a society. I think it's important.
Hero pay, I think, is something that you mentioned in the book. Was
some big chain supermarket workers for a few months in 2021 got hero pay as like a bonus, an acknowledgement of the risk they were taking for their health, but also kind of like, hey, we kind of need you to keep showing up because we're all relying now on restaurants are closed and people don't want to go to restaurants anyway, and then that kind of ended with a whimper, and I think maybe we should not forget the lessons of that time in terms of supermarket workers and how important they are. And we have this a lot of myths that I try to bust about the unskilled worker who doesn't deserve a living wage apparently because they don't have skill, and that's just ridiculous. All work is there's no such thing as unskilled labor, and I think that was very clear during that moment when we needed people to show up. And also just on the job, I learned how much skill it takes to run the register and to do customer service. And so, yeah.
So one of the, I really enjoyed reading your book, and I just as a, I think it's fun quote in quotes to read, but I like the way you wrote it. It kind of roped me in. And I think you captured something that I know I've felt many times in my life, which is working in sort of a customer-facing, corporate sort of job where, to me, it's that gray area. It's like your job is actually navigating this like fine line between like, when do the rules matter? When do you do not report it? When do you absolutely report it? Like when do, it's like this constant delicate dance of like any decision could be a wrong decision, and you're just trying to figure out the way things are done. I think you capture that really, really well.
Oh, great. I'm so glad to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was like a lot of, you were kind of not in a managerial position, but a pseudo-managerial position.
Yeah.
And a recurring thing that happened to you was like, I'm not getting paid by this. I don't have the authority to do this, but nobody else with the authority and the amount of pay is here to like approve the time off or to pick up the slack. And you found yourself like in this kind of weird in-between role, which I think is really common in jobs in general in the 21st century, not just supermarket stuff. I find myself in that position a little bit with my day job. But is that a new part of working these days? Like,
that's a really good question. That's a good point. I mean, I think there are these like, I was called a supervisor, right? So I wasn't a manager. Managers were above me and they made sure that I knew that. But I was also not a regular cashier. I made a couple dollars an hour more than they did. And I had some authority. I was like a shift supervisor. So I would tell people, you're on number 3 and you go get carts in the parking lot. And I kind of organize that. I think in some ways it corresponds to this broad category we have in society called the professional managerial class. Not to get too like theoretical here. I don't know if folks know the work of Barbara Ehrenreich, who wrote Nickel and Dimed, this book that inspired me, which is about low-wage work. She was a journalist and went out and did all these low-wage jobs like cleaning houses and working at Walmart. And then she wrote this book. This came out years and years ago, but she's one of my inspirations. But she kind of coined this term professional managerial class. And she said, in capitalism as it is now, we have, the working people and then the oligarchs, right, the capitalist class. But then in the middle, we have this kind of like level of professionals who are like managers. And they're in this weird position where they have a lot more in common with the workers than they do the top people. But they are in their role. They get paid to sort of manage the workers and to make sure they show up and to make sure they do their jobs. And so they're in this weirdly contradictory position where they sometimes can side and be in solidarity with working people, and other times because their class interest, they earn a little bit more money and they have professional status, so they kind of end up doing the bidding of the capitalist class too. And so, in a strange way, I feel like my job in the supermarket was a little bit like professional managerial class of the retail world, where I was sort of caught in between working people that I felt, that these were my colleagues. I was in solidarity with them in the sense of like, I felt protective of them and wanted their jobs to improve. But I also really was beholden to and I cared about the opinion of the people that were above me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
I do think in our economy there is this kind of middle layer, and sometimes it gets a little confusing for people in it, and to try to describe like who are these people and what is their role, and it changes.
And you definitely like talked about some of not your shifting allegiances, but you gotta stick up for some people, but by sticking up for other people, that means you gotta like penalize people who are not showing up for mental health reasons and leaving more shit for everybody else to do. And it's like, it's a very challenging thing to navigate if you're trying to look out for the people that you work with. It's almost impossible, but I guess that's kind of the way society is at the moment, is a little impossible for everybody.
So one of the things that I kept thinking about when we're talking about sort of layers in society, like almost every chapter in your book, I was imagining that somewhere in some fancy office, there's a Harvard Business School person who is looking at an Excel spreadsheet and is being like, oh, well, we'll make 0.3%, stores that scan 0.3% faster generate this much income. So let's try to encourage them to scan a little faster. And then that sort of filters down, and then you are the one who has to like be like, what am I just supposed to do now? Kind of a thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're absolutely right. We had they call them IPMs, items per minute. And so you had to scan, the goal was 21. So they wanted us to scan 21 items per minute, which is harder than it seems, but it creates injury when you're scanning fast. I write in the book a lot about these musculoskeletal disorders like carpal tunnel and things like that. But you're absolutely right. There's definitely some business school, textbook, or somebody who did McKinsey probably did a study, and they were like, how many more profits can we make if we speed up check cashing, so that the cashier's speeds. And now they just impose that on working people without thinking about what does this do to bodies? What does this do to people's mental state? I mean, it is that repetition has mental effects too, which I talk a lot about in the book. And in fact, I think I mentioned this in the book. There was when they first invented the digital check scan, which is sort of a fascinating history. The president of Kroger, the second largest company, was like, yeah, we need these to speed up labor. That's the point of them. So customers think, oh, it's for me because it's speeding up and it's more convenient and I can get in and get out. And that's true, but that's coming at the cost of, somebody's arm.
I've never thought that anything a corporation ever did was for my benefit, but I know that they do try to sell it. I mean, getting back to our local, electricity monopoly here in Southern California, they're always like, "Oh, this is all for you guys," and it's like, no, it's 100% not. It never is. It never will be. And then just a local icon in our community is one of our grocery stores. There's a notoriously slow checkout person, and I think she's very cool. She's charmingly surly. And if I'm in a hurry, I kind of know, well, maybe I don't need to go into her checkout lane. But I always try to go into her checkout lane when I can, when it's not too long and I'm not in too much of a hurry. And you're giving me a lot of respect for what she's doing, which is just like saying, like, actually, fuck the company. I'm just gonna do this at my own pace and for what's good for me. And like, you've kind of just made me like her a little bit more. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Just to take a step back really quick. So Clean Up on Aisle 5 is your book, and it's about you kind of come back to Utah and start working in a grocery store for the first time in many years. And it's you were there for about a year. Is that correct?
Yep.
And I, not to dig too deep into, your background and stuff, but like, what brought you to the grocery store? Was it that was your one choice in the town you're at, or you said you worked there in the past? Was it familiar for you?
I think it was more that in the pandemic, that was the only place that was hiring.
Okay.
I mean, I needed work. I needed health insurance. As you know, we don't have health insurance unless we have jobs in this country. So I was just in a kind of transitional point in my working life. And it just happened to occur, my period of unemployment, as the pandemic was beginning. And I spent, believe me, I didn't want to go to the supermarket. I tried not to. I applied for lots of white collar jobs. I applied to work in schools. I applied to work like for the city government, doing social media or something. I mean, I was trying to get something that would allow me to work from home, or it would be more professional, more money. And it wouldn't put me at risk because the pandemic was beginning. But I didn't find it. Nobody called me back. I didn't have much luck. And so I figured, okay, let me do, at the same time I was shopping. I was a shopper at the store where I ended up working. And I was kind of impressed with the people that worked there. They were all super nice and friendly. And the pandemic was starting. People were afraid, but here they were showing up, doing their jobs, and they were still really kind. And I kind of was like, wow, this seems kind of nice, and I like it here, and these people are so friendly, and also I need money, but I feel a little guilty because these people are working and I'm not. And so I just one day uploaded my resume to their website and got a call. I was like, all right, let's go check this out, and showed up to the interview, and they hired me. I had never even been a cashier before, but they hired me into the supervisor role. It was $15.80 an hour, which was a couple dollars more than regular cashiers made. And so I was terrified. I didn't think it would be easy. I would have to first learn to cashier before I learned how to supervise anybody. But I just decided, other people are here working. Like, why not me?
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in your book, you think you got that supervisorial position because you had a college degree and
management experience, right?
Okay.
I'd been a teacher. I was old. I was older. Like, I wasn't super young. I think that helped. And they needed somebody, right?
They didn't start you getting carts, basically.
No, I started immediately. Mm-hmm.
And I know that, like, you kind of talk about this a little bit, how there's like some longer term employees and like some older people. I'm always fascinated, I guess, by this concept, and we're talking about jobs and things like that, and especially in the 21st century, like, is a grocery store a place where you can start in the parking lot as an 18-year-old and like be getting carts, and then you can work your way up to being like overseeing, the regional branch and being like the district manager or whatever? Or does that pipeline still exist?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think in my store, what we saw, you could start out getting carts in the parking lot and end up being assistant manager in the produce department. Totally. Absolutely. People moved around and were promoted all the time. The people that ran the store, the top bosses, they didn't even know how to check. They didn't know how to check groceries. Like, the scene that I tell in the book about the Super Bowl when we got mobbed, like, the main guy who's the top boss in the store is freaking out because there's lines down the aisle. He can't get behind a check stand and start working because he doesn't know how. So I think there is room to be promoted and to move into different departments and maybe become a manager, certainly assistant manager. But the top jobs, those are for a different class of people that come, that are hired into those roles. That was my impression.
And
I'm sure there's stories. You could find a story of somebody who started out as a bagger and then became whatever regional manager. But I really think that's pretty rare in the retail world.
If it happened, then corporate PR would definitely be shouting it from the rooftops. Like, look at this guy. He did it. Everybody could do it. This is possible still. And, you talk a bit about how it's maybe more in the context of like doing a food co-op, but you talk about how everybody should have that experience. Like if you are a person in society and you are shopping at a grocery store, you should have that experience of what it's like to be on the other side of the counter, essentially, right?
Yes, I think that also in terms of the supermarket as a metaphor, the check stand is like a metaphor for social division. We have workers on one side and shoppers on the other. And so consumers are supposed to have distinct interests from workers, right? We say, if we raise the pay of supermarket employees, then I'm going to have to pay more for my beer and Cheetos. Right. And that's the idea that the corporate overlords would like us to have because they want to keep those wages low and they want to make it seem like it's in the shopper's best interest. That's false. That's just absolutely false. People on both sides of the check stand have overlapping interests. We all want people to make a living wage. And we all want affordable groceries, and we can have those things. We can have both of those things. We just need to get a little bit of control over these corporations that are harming us. They are too large. You mentioned monopolies. I talk about monopolies a lot in the book. We have these giant retail corporations that have the power to set prices. They have the power to suppress wages. Nobody's regulating them. So I think we all have the same interests. And corporate power is our enemy.
I have a sit-down job, and I'm always like, if the people at the grocery store make more money, then that means like I'm probably going to make more money too, because it's just like everything is wages will go up. And I'm like, if the minimum wage goes up, I don't make minimum wage, but that would be great for me. Yeah. Like, I'm just.
Good for you.
Yeah, I would.
You should spread that ideology as far as you can.
We're doing it on the podcast right now.
So last month, we are now in California. They raised the minimum wage for fast food workers above a certain like threshold of workers to $20, and this is in 2024.
Did society collapse?
Well, right. So everybody was saying that was going to happen. Everybody was saying that it was going to destroy, that we weren't going to, and they found that for the average hamburger, prices went up about 14 cents.
Yeah.
But right now, as of of this week, there's three competing. It's the UCs are competing over this turf right now, and Berkeley and UCSF are both being like, hey, everything is fine. This actually, if anything, this helped everybody, and the workers are fine, and we actually hired more workers. And then UC Santa Cruz, there's some economics professor that is trying to make the case, that whatever, it hurt people. Anyway, this is an ongoing battle for sure.
I don't know about y'all, but here in California, we simply cannot find Big Mac anywhere. We can't get a Big Mac anywhere. They raised wages too much, and the Big Mac's gone now.
It's impossible. Sure, yeah.
Adam, have you found a Big Mac recently?
I think I know where I could get one.
It's propaganda. We need to, this propaganda that raising wages will just mean we have to pay more. These corporations, they can afford to raise wages. That's just ridiculous.
100%. And, there's that big merger between, is it Safeway and Kroger? I forget exactly who's doing the merging, but it's like Vons is buying Ralph's. I forget which way that's going.
Is Kroger part of it? Kroger and Albertsons, maybe?
Is it Kroger and Albertsons?
Kroger and Albertsons. They tried to merge, but the government blocked it.
Yeah, which everybody was very surprised that it still could go through. It's kind of like an active.
I think it's in the courts probably.
Yeah, but that would be so much worse for people who work for them, people who shop there. Like, it's not the raising of the wage that is the threat to society. It's the corporate mergers. It's
That's right.
Yeah. It's who's getting the money at the end of the day, not who's getting paid for the actual kind of labor of the situation, I would say.
I should have brought this up when we were talking about scanning faster, but one of the most dystopian things that you mentioned in your book was Aldi's phrase, "the thrill at the till," to scan faster.
Right.
It's just like, it's so dark. It's being like,
dark. It's super dark.
yeah. It's very 1984. I know people overuse that, but this is directly that. Yeah. The thrill
It's
of the
supposed to be
till.
like a fun. I've never been to an Aldi, so have you been? You'll have to tell me.
Yes.
It's supposed to be like a fun experience for the customer, right?
No.
Who's thrilled by?
Nobody.
I mean, the ads I'm getting for Aldi now on my social media shows this cowboy who's like, we wrangle our own, you go wrangle your cart, and he uses this lasso and like lassos up a cart. And it's totally like, oh, you actually are doing all of this work and that's how we keep our prices down. But I don't think that the prices are like that much cheaper at Aldi's anyway. I think it's just like, you go to an Aldi's and there's two people that work there, and I'm like, oh, that means that these two people are like wildly overworked, and
they're sort of doing the CVS Walgreens philosophy of like, let's not hire anybody, and we'll just this will be a wasteland, and customers are going to have to figure out their way through it.
Right.
So that's cool.
Dark.
I wanted to pick your brain about one thing that I was thinking about a lot before I actually read your book, and you touched on it in your book. You talked about, and I thought it was a really interesting insight, how we're being very anti-corporate, very anti-chain grocery store right now in our conversation. But you said that like historically, the idea of the chain restaurant kind of helped to mitigate the effects of like discrimination in the South, because grocery stores, like, which were, a national chain or like a New York regional chain coming down to more segregated areas, they had corporate policies in place to prevent the more casual discrimination against, black shoppers, essentially. That was, we're not going to say that, Safeway ended segregation or anything like that, but it was a way to bring values from part of the country into parts of the country that didn't share the same values.
Exactly.
And, I guess I was thinking about that in the negative sense, in that, I'm trying to think of what the actual, I was like, there's a Walmart in our community that is selling stuff that is like probably actively harmful to our community. One example I've got, and roll with me on this for a minute, the Walmart in Yucca Valley, which is the city next to Joshua Tree, which has a national park, I am told is the #1 seller of birdseed of all Walmarts in the country. And people go there. Walmart sells birdseed at every Walmart. If you're in Nebraska, if you're in Utah, if you're in Florida, they're selling the same birdseed from the same supplier, the same distributor. But it's seed, and it's a plant-based material, and like the national park near that particular Walmart is now struggling with wildfires from invasive grasses, which come from birdseed, essentially.
Wow. Oh, that's fascinating.
And that's a case of like this, somebody, where are the Waltons based out of, like South Carolina or somewhere in the South? But wherever Walmart's corporate headquarters is, they're not considering like what we need in our community specifically for our community. They're just like, well, we'll sell birdseed because we sell birdseed everywhere and people will buy birdseed. And I guess that's kind of the two sides of that coin when it comes to like, a national or international value coming into a community. Like you do get such things like have you seen any like positives aside from the segregation issue? Like I
I think we're going to need, look, corporations brought a lot of good things. They brought lower prices when they were introduced, right? They could sell in high volume, and so they could charge less for individual items. That was true. The Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company that I talk about in the book, the A&P kind of, the whole discount model that Walmart is famous for was invented by this grocery company called the A&P, back in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. And so you can get lower prices when you buy in bulk, right? When you buy in volume. And then there's the segregation bit where these big corporations, when they entered the scene and got rid of the mom and pop, black shoppers were treated better because corporations didn't care about local racism, like local customs of like, they cared about making money. And so they standardized practices and like you come in and buy just like anybody else. It's like you said, they weren't like trying to end segregation or be, or like they weren't trying to like advance racial justice. They were just trying to like sell groceries, but it did have this kind of effect. I think that like we have hundreds of millions of people in our country. If we're going to have groceries, we're going to have some kind of national distribution network and supply chain, national supply chain. And we're going to have different parts of the country where you grow different kinds of food, right? Being able to send stuff from one part of the country to another. I think we can use the corporate model of centralization and of supply chain, what we've learned about supply chains and about how to get things from one place to another. All that's really good, and we're going to need that. I don't believe for a minute we can feed America with like a million mom and pop stores on that. Small businesses are great, and we should support them, but that's not the way to. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. So what we need is big distribution and national networks, but we need to get rid of the profit motive and think about public need. And that's got to be the priority, if that makes sense. Because
Kroger is under pressure to constantly grow and return value, quote unquote, for their shareholders. And the problem of transporting broccoli and storing it and then giving it to giving it to someone for their money, like that has been solved. There's not really any we're hitting physical limits for how much we can, which is why the workers keep sort of absorbing these quiet hidden blows in under the guise of efficiency because they have nowhere else to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And we solved the problem of how to get broccoli in a refrigerated truck or whatever from one part of the country to another. We should keep doing that. That's good. But just not do it in a way where the people that are benefiting from food sales are like shareholders and executives, and we should have cooperatives, nonprofits, municipal grocery stores in a national network that would allow us to distribute food to feed America, but also and do it in a way that's that considers public need and that's socially just, and that also enforces anti-discrimination law. Going back to what the corporation did do was as a side effect. We can't have racism in stores, right? We have to have a system where we enforce anti-discrimination law, and that's possible to do in this, even without the profit motive, obviously.
You mentioned this in your book, Ann, and I have to admit I have not. I'm aware of it, but I haven't been following it super closely. And Adam, you might be following this a little bit more closely as well. You mentioned that Zoran Mamdani, the mayor of New York, has been working on. I'm not even going to use the language correctly, but is it like city managed cooperative grocery stores? Can either of you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, I would just call them municipal grocery stores, but I guess you call them city owned. From what I understand, Mamdani is proposing one city owned store in each of the 5 boroughs as like an experiment. And these stores would receive city funds, would subsidize purchase of food, and prices would be lower. So each shoppers in each borough would have the option to go to Whole Foods or Key Food, but also you could go to the local municipal store where you can get your basic goods for a lower cost. This is a great idea. I think it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be hard to make it work. We shouldn't be naive about that. The corporate stores don't like it, and they have a lot of power. But I think it's a step in the right direction. It's not new. There have been these municipal stores and these kind of cooperatives for 100 years. So it's nothing new. It's just we forgot about it. But I think that government stepping in to provide a service to grocery shoppers and to assure that they can buy food affordably, that's obviously what else are governments for?
Do we know the status of those? I have not been keeping up on the story, but are they?
Yeah, I think he's announced them. He's announced them, and they're in the process. The first one's going to be in the Bronx. They're in the process of they've identified a location, and so I'm really enthusiastic about it. I think it's absolutely a step in the right direction, and I can't wait to see how it turns out.
I mean, reading your book, I was like, oh, I should be working on like putting together like a farm co-op in our community.
Yeah.
We're definitely not a food desert here, in my opinion. Adam, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, because we were in the desert, but
yes.
no.
We have a lot of grocery stores.
Right.
There's we're a rural community, so like if you live in Landers, it might take you 20 minutes to get to the grocery store, but
that's the thing. Wonder Valley and Landers and Antelope Valley and places like that, those are food deserts.
Yes.
For sure.
But the overall, like, I guess the bounds of what I think of as our community, we do have a lot of grocery stores and a lot of choice, but like, and we have farmers markets and stuff like that. But I reading your book, I'm like, well, I'm kind of inspired a little bit to dig into this problem a little bit and like see what we can do around here.
Excellent.
Getting back to your time at the grocery store, you dig into a lot of like serious issues, and I would say it seems like the takeaway I got from your writing was that the sense of community and the people that you worked with, the people that you served, were probably a highlight of your time at the grocery store.
For sure. Yeah.
Like, what were some of the other highlights? Was there any fun to be had working at the grocery store?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it was a pleasure in some ways to work during the pandemic and to feel like there was a real sense like we are serving the community. We are here making sure people can get their food and go home and isolate, right? And we're taking a risk, but there was pride in that. I was proud to do that, and a lot of other people were too. It was hard, and it didn't always. It wasn't always. Every day wasn't always, a barrel of fun, but there was a lot of pride in that work, and I think that exists all the time, even when there's no pandemic. Right? There's a lot of grocery workers have a lot of pride in their jobs and want to serve the community. That's what they're there for. So they just deserve to be compensated for their work. I still have friends that I met at the supermarket, that I hang out with, that I talk to regularly. So I made friends there. It's like it's a family. We shared that experience, and there's something about that stays with you. So, like I said earlier, there's the split screen, right, where you have supermarket is a wonderful community place where people come in for all sorts of things, and you recognize each other and you know each other, and then with you and your colleagues, you support each other, and this is your home away from home. And then there's the other side of the split screen where it's, everybody's underpaid, sick, poor, injured, and miserable.
One of the things that your book sort of is helping me work through, and this is something that maybe I'll talk to my therapist about or something, but it's the sort of the trauma that I have had, because I was working in retail at a very young age, of like some of these two things stick out really close. Really, one is just being fast. So also being in New York. Like let's get our job done. There's a system. Let's get it done. And if I'm holding up the system in any way, that's I gotta and I carry that with me everywhere I go, especially at the grocery store. It's like I'm gonna line up. I'm gonna put my stuff down. I'm gonna put the thing down for the other person. It's like I'm gonna be the perfect customer in my brain, because otherwise, like I don't know what. Otherwise, I don't know what. But that's definitely something that's pretty deep in me. And the other one is the. I remember specifically I was working at Sam Goody. I was 16 years old, and it was New Year's Eve, and I got sick. Like I had a fever, and I had a girlfriend at the time. I couldn't go out with my girlfriend. And then on New Year's Day, I called Sam Goody, and I was like, "Hey, I can't show up to work." And the guy was like, yeah, you can't show up to work New Year's Day. Yeah, and I was like, "No, I have a fever." He's like, "You don't sound sick." And it's like this sick policing that you talk a lot about in the book.
That's a good point.
Yeah, which is terrifying, and especially in a pandemic, but in any context. Yeah, I don't know.
Nobody was ever sick at my store. Everybody was always just trying to get out of work.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah.
You got to practice your cough on the phone. I'm so sick. I work with people at my job, and like I oversee some people in kind of a way, and like if my co-host or somebody on the news team says like, "Oh, I'm sick," I'm like, take 3 days off. Don't even, like I'm like, just please. I don't know. I guess I'm not a corporation. I'm not a bean counter. I'm not a Harvard Business School guy with a spreadsheet factoring things in. I can show my humanity a little bit more than
but also
a spreadsheet
like
guy.
For the grocery store, they're cutting hours and people to the point of one person not showing up. It just sort of it's on everybody else's shoulder. Yeah,
Total
it's a
disaster. Oh yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely.
And that's by design. I mean, they know this is like this just-in-time philosophy of like let's get it as close to the wire as we possibly can.
Precarious house of cards, I would
That's
say.
exactly right.
A lot of the people that you talk about in your book, it seems like they're working through injuries. That seems to be a pretty common theme throughout the book. Is like you don't think of grocery checkout people as like having such a physical job, and it is in fact quite physical. And there's the checkout person with the bad back, and I think there's checkout people with broken feet and arms and slings, and like injury is a really big through line in your book.
Yeah, this is one thing I did not know before I worked at this store. I did not expect cashiering to be easy, and I was pretty sure standing behind your register for 8 hours probably was tiring, but I did not expect the level of physical injury that so many people had. You mentioned a couple people, and people came in with injuries because of prior jobs they had. I mean, working people use their bodies for a wage, right? And so that your body's going to break down. But just the scanning motion, which we've already mentioned, and the standing, anybody who'd been at the job very long was in pain, and they had to keep coming to work and working in pain. There's no recourse, right? Most people didn't have many people didn't have health insurance. They couldn't afford it. And even if they did, the thing that you need to do in a situation like that is take time off so you can rest. But they're not going to pay you for taking a month off to rest your wrist or your elbow. So folks are really working themselves out of a job. That's what's happening. Their bodies they're using up the last resource that they have that capitalism wants, right, is their bodies. And once that's gone, there's nothing left for them to trade. It's back to the dark side of the split screen.
Standing is one of the stupidest ones, because in Europe they just have stools, and that would just that is even helpful for their bottom line, is to not have a hurt worker. So just give them a damn stool. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the check stands are designed for standing. In my store, there was no you couldn't put a chair because the counter is too high and there's not room enough behind. If you put a chair, it's going to block the path behind you. The whole front end, right, the name of the check stand area, is designed for standing. You couldn't even, if we'd all decided tomorrow, okay, we're going to all let cashiers sit now in supermarkets around the country, it wouldn't work because the registers are designed for, you'd have to remodel stores.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the level of the built environment just assumes that people are going to be able to do this. It's pretty.
One of the darkest parts of your book, one of your coworkers passes away, and then the next day you just see her name just oh, she was supposed to work that day, and it's just crossed off. It's dark.
Yeah.
It kind of shows, I don't know, just how expendable the whole system is. We all are in the whole system. Yep. Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about, the Harvard business guy, the bean counter looking at the Excel sheet. I really do think that, when you're in a retail environment or even outside of the retail environment, like a lot of jobs, people are just like, oh yeah, there's just like a line item and I just cross them. Oh, they're dead. Just cross them right out. Like it is a little heartless how operations are being run, on every level. And I think that's a 21st century problem. I mean, it's a 20th century problem. We're in the 21st century, still a damn problem.
But I'm sure the AI bean counters are going to be a little less heartless, right?
I mean, they'd like to replace us with robots. We'll see if that works out for them, though.
We're talking about the grimmer elements of things, and like you talk about getting a chair wouldn't necessarily solve the problems because of how things are designed. And I wanted to ask you, what are some immediate things that the companies can do to make things easier? And the second part of that question is grocery store goers like Adam and myself, what can we do as customers to make the experience better for the people that are working there?
I mean, I think what customers can do is just be kind. Grocery work can feel pretty thankless, and you can feel pretty invisible. See a lot of customers. Not all, most of them are perfectly pleasant, and they just want to get in and get out. There are some rude ones, some abusive stories that I tell in the book. I think to be as understanding as you can, as kind as you can to your grocery clerk, cashier, ask them how they're doing. It's not like they're going to tell you, but they might. Let them know that you see them as a person. Certainly if there's any, the number one thing that grocery clerks need is unions. That would be the top thing if I had to make a list. People, some grocery workers are unionized, but not many. There's about a 5% unionization rate in retail. And many of the states, I think about half the states in the U.S. are these they call them right to work states. It's like the right wing term for we don't let you form unions. And we need to get rid of these right to work laws. So if you see your grocery worker neighbor trying to organize their store and trying to unionize, you should not cross that picket line. You should support them. And yeah, I think, one of the things I think about, because I have a background as an activist organizer, is we should do a campaign where we set up a dental clinic outside of the chain grocery store and just invite the workers to come get their teeth fixed and bring their kids and get health checkups. I don't know. And that's a way to open the conversation about unionization. I think people have problems with their teeth. Teeth aren't part of the body, I guess, in terms of even those who have healthcare can't go to the dentist. And so we need to provide resources that people need and show that we care and that we give a damn and that we understand the conditions they're in. And that's a way, I think, to show solidarity. It opens a broader conversation about how we can organize together. I think it's going to be really hard for grocery workers, at least since these right-to-work states, like the one where I live in, to do it on their own, just because of all the conditions I described, the hunger and low wages and the bodily injury and depression. And so it is going to take shoppers stepping in at some point to offer some support.
Solidarity. I looked up some statistics of this. In California, this is all workers. There's about a 16% unionization rate. California is not a right-to-work state. In Utah, it's 3%, which is a right-to-work state. So only 3% of workers, and both of these are not enough. In Iceland, it's 90%. So 16% sounds good, but that's nowhere close to enough. But it just shows you how devastating the right-to-work laws are. Yeah.
Yep.
And our local shops, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of our local chains is Union, Stater Brothers. Mm-hmm. And when you go to a Stater Brothers, you can tell that people are just happier there, and that's no shade to other people working at the grocery stores in our area, but like the union workers, definitely, it's like you see the same faces year after year, and I'm sure nobody's thrilled with their job like all of us, but they seem a little bit in a better spirits. They are not complaining about the job to you, which sometimes I do get from other grocery store clerks, and always happy to be the ear that they can bend. But I don't hear the unionized employees complaining quite so much, I guess.
Yeah, I did another podcast recently, and I didn't know this, and this was John Wiener from The Nation, and he lives in LA, and he was telling me unionized grocery workers there make like $29 an hour. And that's like the basic. You can obviously make a lot more than that. And I was just like, that's double what I was making. I was a supervisor, and it's because they're unionized. So I think that's a super big key to improving people's lives.
Well, Ann Larson, the name of the book, Clean Up on Aisle 5. It is available now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Buy it from a local shop if possible, or is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Buy it from your nonprofit bookstore, or bookshop.org works. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Are you working on anything next? Do you have another project in the hopper?
Well, I've been doing a bunch of journalism on the supermarket now because I'm like obsessed. I just published an article in The Nation about injury, about the failures of the federal government to protect workers from injury. So I've been doing I'm trying to get the word out as much as I can along with the book. So you'll see me around.
Fantastic. And we really appreciate you joining us on Clean Up on Aisle podcast with your book, Clean Up on Aisle 5. Ann Larson,
Thanks,
if people want more of you, where can they find you?
I have a website, annlarsonwrites.com. You can find me there.
All right. For Clean Up on Aisle podcast, I'm Jef Harmatz. You're Adam Fligsten. Thank you so much.